Press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss any update from Tech Primers.
In this video, we are going to see how to create RESTful web services using Vertex. If you're not familiar with what is Vertex, take a look at my video on what is Vertex and I have compared it with Spring Boot. But just for the briefing part, Vertex is a library which is used for creating or building reactive applications on the JVM. It can be run on the JVM, or you can create Node application, you can create Ruby application, you can use Groovy or Scala or Kotlin or even Java. So Vertex is a library with which you can build reactive applications for different purposes. So let's try creating a RESTful web service on Vertex and see how simple it is. I have my IntelliJ open here and I'm just going to create a simple Maven project. If you're familiar with Gradle, you can use Gradle as well. So I'm just going to use Maven. I'll just select the quick start here. The group ID which we're going to use is com tech primers dot vertex, and the artifact will be vertex example. I'll just name it as vertex hyphen example and I'll give finish. So the archetype has completed the generation of the project here. We do have the skeleton as well. So we have a file called app, which is under our package com tech primers vertex. And you can see that it is just printing hello world currently. So right now it's not doing anything else. And if you go to the POM XML, we have only the JUnit dependency. Apart from that, nothing else is there. We are going to use Vertex in this project. We are going to use the latest version of Vertex, which is 3.5.1, and I'm going to use Vertex Web, which by default uses Vertex Core. So let's use the Vertex dependency. The artifact for Vertex Web is vertex-web, and the group ID is io.vertex. And if you know, Vertex is under the Eclipse umbrella now. So Vertex is now funded by the Eclipse Foundation. Yeah, I'll do a import project. So this is the only dependency which we need to add. We don't have any initializer like we have in the Spring Boot. That's why we manually created the Maven project and we have added the dependency manually. But if there is a kickstart, or if there is a Spring initializer kind of UI where we can just mention the dependencies and the project gets created out of the box, that will be much simpler. Unlike Spring Boot, you won't see any annotations in Vertex because Vertex uses functional style. So we are going to see how to create the HTTP server using Vertex. I'll just make it clean here. I'll just remove the hello world command by default, which got added as a part of the Maven archetype creation. So I think we are set, right? So in order to use Vertex, how do we create a Vertex instance, or how do we tell Vertex that I need to create a HTTP server? We can do this. We need to create a object of type vertex, and how we can do that is there is a static block or a default implementation. If you go to the vertex, this is the default implementation or the static implementation which can be used, which will create a vertex factory. See that there is an implementation created from the vertex factory. So that's what we are going to do here. So we will get an instance of the vertex from this particular method. Now the next step is to create the HTTP server. In order to do that, we can use the methods from the Vertex interface. If you go to Vertex, there are tons of interfaces, there are tons of methods which we can use. It is not opinionated like Spring Boot. As I said earlier, you don't have to do it in a single way. You can do it in multiple ways, and you can do it in a flexible way with which you can write code with Vertex. We are going to create a HTTP server. That's what we are going to do here. I'll just do a simple HTTP server create, and let's create a object here. So this will hold the instance of the HTTP server. So Vertex creates a HTTP server using the create method, and it hosts the instance Using this instance, we can now do whatever we want. The first thing what we will do is we will assign a port to it because it needs to run on a port, right? What we will be doing is we will assign the port, let's say 8091 as the port. So this is the port where we will be listening to, so that we can get requests from the browser or from different web service and we can process that. Now we need to create routers. With the Vertex Web, we can now use the APIs to connect to the Vertex core, and we don't have to manually handcraft how we used to do previously. So we can use the Vertex Web APIs. In order to do that, there is something called router. So router is something similar to the controller which we use in the REST or the Spring MVC world. We can create routers which will be useful in creating these REST mappings or REST resources. So we can use this option router.router, and we need to provide the Vertex instance, and we'll just provide this Vertex instance directly here. So we created a router using the Vertex instance by using router.router. Now in the router we can register different stuff. You just need to add different routes. So I'll just add a route. For example, I'll just say route, and on that route you can have some different handlers. So we can have request handlers and response handlers without the web API using Vertex core. Now we are using the web API, so we will be using a handler. The handler gets the context. So routing context is the context which we will have here. So this is of type routing context, and let's see what is there inside routing context, right? So routing context will have the request and the response handlers. So you see that we have the response handlers here because this is going to be called when we are going to route messages. So we can do routing context dot response, and this is going to give the response object. Let's create a variable, right? So using this response object, we can now add some stuff so that we can push it back to the UI. So this is going to be the response which we are going to send the user back. So on the response object, we can add some headers, right? So I'll just add some header information saying content type as plain text for now. You can have JSON messages, you can have application JSON, you can do that. In Spring we used to do interceptors, or you have annotations to in order to add headers to the response. However, here we can directly handcraft this. And finally we can end this response by sending a message back. So this ending the response with a message will be the message which will be streamed to the UI part or the caller. For now I'm just going to say response dot end as high tech primers. So that is the message which is going to be pushed to the UI, right? So that's all, we are done. So this is like the API which will be called for every request. So we didn't add any route, right? So we did not, if you notice here, we did not have any route here. So this basically means any request endpoint you hit on this particular server is going to go and fetch high tech primers. So let's see that. Before that, we need to register this particular route or the router to the HTTP server, because we created this router but we did not do anything, right? We need to register this with the request which we will be sending, correct? Because this is a request which needs to be registered as a response. So we need to use the request handler and provide this router. So we can use router accept, because we need to provide the HTTP server again to the router in order to add it into the router. So we can use it like this. So what we did is we registered the request handler here, and we are registering the port where we are going to listen. So this will start the web server. So let's try starting this now. It should be starting in the port 8091, and the default message which we are going to get is high tech primers, because we did not add any other path here. It's just basically a routing which gets redirected to this particular router every time. So this is how we can create HTTP server in Vertex. So let's go and see. So the Vertex server is up. I'll just hit localhost 8091 and you can notice that it is returning high-tech primers. Now we need to add some specific path, right? I wanted to see how we can add some path. So in Spring we used to add some annotations, or if you are using Jersey you used to use annotations, right? How we can do that in the um, Vertex world? in order to do in order to register this particular message to a path, we can add it in the route itself. So we can add some route here. Let's say hello. So this will register the message to the hello path. So let's restart the server and see what happened. So we created a route previously without any path. That basically means all the routes will be redirected to that particular path. Now we have assigned a specific path. Let's see what happens now. So if I refresh this, resource not found because there is no route, isn't it? We have created something called hello. If I hit this hello, this should return high-tech primers. See that it has returned high-tech primers. That basically means our resource is getting hit, right? We can even add a logging statement so that came to hello, so that we know it is hitting here, right? So this is how you create a route, and you can create a path to that route and you can use it. So this is like a simple fetch or a request and response style. If you want to have multiple routes, you can do that. We can have multiple routes. In fact, we can have multiple message processings for the same route. So you can even register another route with the same path, and then once this particular route is executed, the rest of the routes will be executed. In order to do that, you need to have a different way of doing it, because these are not request responses, right? Because you need to push the messages every now and then. In order to do that, what we can use is we can use something called chunk. So chunk will enable the responses so that you can execute multiple handlers and you can push the messages back to the UI. So this is like a request and response. Now if I want to have multiple routes, let's see, right? Using the response, we can set something called set chunked and make it as true. This is going to stream the data like your reactive applications, where we will be pushing the data from the server to the UI. So I have just marked the set chunk as true, and I'll remove these part because I don't want to end the response, because if I do a end response it will end. Instead what we can do is we can do a write. We can just write into the stream and still stay. I'll just remove these two, and I'm going to add one more um, routing context information. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the vertex, and I'm going to add a scheduler to identify is there anything else to match. So I'm not going to immediately call the next router. I'm just going to add the uh, vertex code to say that after this particular router, allow me to go to the next one. So this is like adding filters and going through a chaining process, right? So that's what we're going to do here. We are using the routing context, get the vertex API or the vertex instance, and we are going to add some timer information. We can add, let's say, 5 seconds. We can add a timer of 5 seconds with a delay, and what we are going to do is we are going to use the routing context to go to the next router. So this basically does the search for the next router with the same name, because we are going to create multiple routers, right? That's what this is going to do. So it is going to create one more route for us to be used. So let's do that. Let's create a name for this particular route handler. Let's say handler 1. The same thing I'm just going to do, but for a handler 2, because I need a different handler, right? So came to hello 2. I'll just keep the path as same so that we have the path retained, but I'll just print the messages in a different fashion. And we don't have to have the response as chunked because already we chunked it here. We don't have to do that again. hi tech primers from hello 2. So this way it will go to the next router. Same way I can create one more as handler 3. I just say call to handler 3 and then I'll just do this. But however, now I don't want to proceed, right? That's what I decide. In that case, I can just end it. So I can do a end response like how we can do. So I'm just going to say end my stuff and I'll just say ended. So I'll just push a message say ended. So this basically means I trigger only one particular URL hello. Internally it can go to multiple routes, so you can have multiple routes and you can chain it using this way. So where I am delaying it for every 5 seconds and I'm saying that the response is chunked, basically I will send information in different stream. So let's see what happens when I restart this now. Since we have already registered the router here, we don't have to re-register because these are different routes or handlers. I'll hit the same again. See that we got high tech primers. After 5 seconds, we are going to get more information from the server saying hi, see this, right? We got high tech primers too, and also we got high tech primers and it got ended within the next 5 seconds because we have added a response as 5 seconds. That's what happened. So after 5 seconds from here, it was called here. And since we reuse the existing vertex set timer, it just immediately called the next one. So that's what happened here. So the next thing is how do I create get and post methods, right? So let's try removing all these because let's not use these. I want only one now. How do I do get, or how do I know which is post or which is put, right? By default, since we did not assign any HTTP method type, it is going to accept everything. So irrespective of whatever type of method you're going to trigger, it is going to give a response. However, in order to use the specific HTTP methods and you want to have different handlers for each of them, you can directly do that in the router here. We can just add a get and we can add like this. So you just say that I don't want to route everything, I just use the get here. So we are doing a get. If I need a post, I can do a post as well. I'll just create one more handler and I'll just say post came to post, I take primers from post. I'll just add some backslash n so that it prints in the next line, right? Yeah, the router is already registered. So this is the get and this is the post. Let's try restarting it. Meanwhile, I'll also open postman so that I can show you the post. So the server is up. Let's do a get now. It should return the get saying hi tech primers. Yeah, it says hi tech primers resource not found. We did not end, right? Ideally we should have ended. That is a mistake which I did, right? I'll just do the end because I don't want it to go any further. It was just finding out the next available router, but it was not available. Let me restart it so that we have a clean code there. And also same way in the post, I think we have again the routing again. I'll just do a end here as well, right? Cool. So server is up already. So unlike Spring Boot, where Spring Boot takes lots of time to load everything onto the memory and it does lots of stuff, but Vertex doesn't do that because it's just a library. It's not a framework as such. I'll hit the get option again. Yeah, we are getting the high tech primers. We need to do a post. In order to do that, I will use the postman here. Let's use 8091 slash hello. This is going to do a post. We should be seeing, yeah, high tech primers from post. See the router which was present here, high tech primers from post got triggered. So we hit both the hello and the post. So this is how you can differentiate get and post. If I do a put, it is going to give me an error because we did not add any router. See this resource not found because it is not there, right? So this is how you can define different mappings, the HTTP method mappings using Vertex. Now, how do I pass variables to this particular path and I want to print that, right? I can do this. I can just pass it as hello and then I can pass a name to it. So similar to how we used to pass it in Spring or any REST path, right? We can pass it in the path and you can use the routing context which we have here because we are getting the response from there, right? Now we will be getting it from the request. As I said earlier, this routing context acts like an application context in the Spring world with which you can use the request and response. Let's do the routing context dot get dot request dot get parameter. We need to get the parameter called name. That's what we added here, right? And let's try naming it as name, and I'll print out the name as well here. So hi, I'll just add that name. So we should be able to get the name. Let me restart this guy. The server is up. Now if I refresh, it should not work because it is expecting a path, and that path is nothing but name. So let's pass Peter. Yeah, it says hi Peter. If I pass tech primers, it should say hi tech primers. Yeah. So this is how you can pass the path parameters. If you want to pass any JSON, you can do that as well. If you notice here, we created a router and we assigned the router with different HTTP methods. However, if you want to restrict the HTTP router to allow only one type of method, we can do that. We can use the method here. We can use the route and then say method, and we can restrict it to a specific method. For example, let's say get. We can do this. We can route it to a specific method if we don't want to allow every one to use the same router and use different HTTP mappings. So we can do that as well. There are also regex options available in the path here. We can have regex here. We can have regex pattern matching, and we can have a single implementation or the handler for different paths. Before ending the video, I just will show you how we can consume JSON messages from this. Like in the post, we can have a consumes option here. Like how we do the annotations in Spring, we can have like different methods inside the API because the API is so rich that it provides everything in a functional style. So if you see here, we are writing everything in the functional style. It makes sense, right, to read it. Unlike Spring where we don't know what's happening under the hood, here we are telling the Vertex API or the Vertex engine to say do these for me. So I'm going to add the consumes option as let's say star slash JSON. I'll just add it as JSON. This basically means it is going to consume messages of type JSON. So I need to push a JSON message to this particular server. Let's restart this and see what happens now. I was pushing a text message there, and we'll see how it works now, right? So let me go to post. I'll go to post, and in the header I have application JSON. If I trigger the JSON, it should work because it is expecting JSON. See that it worked. If I pass something else, right? Let's say I pass text slash HTML. If I pass this, it should not work. See that the Vertex API or the Vertex server is now not allowing me to trigger text HTML because my consumption part is defined as application type as JSON. So you can push JSON messages from here, right? So this is how you can write a RESTful server using Vertex. See that, right? It is very simple. I didn't have to get to know any annotations as such. The only thing is it is not opinionated, and you can have methods. So you will have lots of methods under the rich API provided by Vertex, and Vertex is very fast. As you have seen, whenever I tried restarting it, it came up very quickly because there is no framework which is running like Spring Boot, which is doing annotation processing, or which is consuming, or which is doing a component scan of all your jars. There is nothing like that. right? So this is how you can use Vertex to create a RESTful web service. What I'll do is I'll just push this code into a GitHub repository. You can take it from there for reference. If you like the video, go ahead and like it. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe to it. Meet you again in the next video. Thank you very much.